It seemed strange to her that they were still in flower so late in the season. But then, what dreams were ever truthful? The roses planted in her garden grew white flowers and bloomed for just some little time in June. She slept then with her windows wide open to the world and let their fragrance fill the house. In her dream, these September roses had a yellow flower that grew in clusters and cast a fainter scent. She remembered, when she woke, that she had seen a man tending to them, a man dressed somewhat strangely for a cottager, tying back the flowers, puzzling himself over the arrangement of every branch and stem as though the task were new to him. Dear Lord, if all her dreams could be so real, so peaceful, then she would sleep out her time here and hope never to wake again. Part 1. Chapter 1. September 2000. It was late evening by the time Ray turned the key in the old-fashioned lock and let himself into Matilda's cottage. He stood for a moment in the dim light and surveyed the tiny front room. It had changed little from the summer visits he had made here with his parents so many years before, though the cottage, and this room in particular, seemed smaller than he remembered. Perhaps, he thought wryly, he had just been much smaller himself then. Ray turned and closed the stiff front door, then stepped the few paces it took to reach the centre of the room, ducking instinctively but unnecessarily under the exposed beams that slattered across the dull white ceiling. The walls of the room were lined with bookshelves, filled mainly with neatly stacked, well-thumbed paperbacks. Furnishings were worn, grown old with their owner, the most threadbare seats hidden by plaid rugs and coloured throws, and there were bare boards around the square of the carpet where it didn't quite spread to meet the skirting, the old wood stained almost black with age and years of polishing. Ray smiled and, as often as he did when he smiled, touched his cheek experimentally, as though to see how the muscles reacted to the action. Stiffly, that was how, but it was getting better. The scarring not as inflexible. Or maybe it was just that these days he risked smiling a little more often. He crossed the room to the fireplace. A fire had been lit earlier, and heat still radiated faintly from the coals. The cottage had been empty for months, but the solicitors had assured him they'd arranged for it to be cleaned and aired before he took possession. Ray wondered how much that consideration would be adding to his bill. 2 little tables kept guard on either side of the fire. These were the things Ray remembered most from his visits here. 2 low, round tables cluttered with an assortment of odd and, so his mother was fond of saying, useless objects. As a child, being allowed to play with Matilda's things was the only good part about otherwise boring adult visits. His mother had been right, he supposed. They were useless. Odd-shaped stones, a toy fire engine, a snowstorm and a painted tin containing remnants of broken costume jewellery. Its twin, full of foreign coins, sat on the other table. He fingered the objects now, remembering the pleasure he had taken in trying to guess what Tildy had added to her collection since the last visit. Remembering the guilt, too, when he had purloined a couple of coins from Tildy's box. 3 terrible months he kept them until the next visit, then slipped them back. Ray went through to the kitchen and looked out of the crooked, cross-hatched window at what had been Matilda's garden. It would have broken her heart to see it like this. Overgrown, trellises broken down by the spring storms and not mended, the yellow climbing roses fallen to the ground and muddied by yesterday's rain. He leaned wearily against the kitchen table and glanced around at the 50s-style cabinets that must have been the height of fashion when Matilda had put them in. Was he hungry? He thought vaguely that he really ought to eat, or should at least go back out to the car and bring in the groceries. Maybe he'd do that, then go to bed. Impatiently, he jerked himself into action, inspected the state of the fridge and the larder, and was relieved to find them clean and the fridge working, even if the must of long misuse still caught unpleasantly at his nose. He went back out to the car, making 2 trips to fetch the luggage.